Hi, and welcome to Jacksonville Middle School. I hope you enjoy the virtual tour that we have put together for you. Upon arrival at school each morning, these front doors are where we ask all students walking, riding bikes, or being dropped off to enter. This is also where you would sign in if you're late or sign out if you're leaving early. Parents and visitors, we would ask you to enter through these doors as well. Upon entering our building, you will find the main office. Students, you can access the main office through the Commons into the main office door. Once you are inside the main office, you will find Mrs. Turner and Miss Jacobs. These are the two secretaries at our main desk. This is where you would check in or out of the building, or if you have a pass to speak to any administrator, counselor, social worker, psychologist, or nurse. As you start down the hallway of our main office, the first door on the right is our Student Services office. Ms. Helmick is the main secretary in this office. This office holds our counselors, Mrs. Soar and Ms. DA, our social worker, Mrs. Van Beber, and our school psychologist, Mrs. Folker. These ladies are here to help you in any way you need. They can be found in this office. Continuing down the hall, you will find our principal, Mr. Barlow's office, and assistant principal, Mrs. Lashman's office. Then, directly across the hall is our nurse. And finally, at the end of the hall, you will find assistant principal, Mr. English's office, as well as Dean of Students, Mr. Parkovich's office. If we continue past the main office and down the hall, we will find the second entrance to our Student Services office. This is another entrance that you can use to find our counselors, social workers, and school psychologists. You will also find the second entrance to the nurse's office. If you take medicine during the day, you can just go to this door instead of going through the main office. As we continue down this hall, you'll find our soda machines, which are not accessible during the day, as well as our concession stand that you will use during basketball, volleyball, and other school activities that are held with inside JMS. The next room you will find is Mr. Overton's classroom. He is the AEP teacher. The next stop on our tour is the fitness room. This is used during the day for PE, other activities, and wrestling practice after school. Across the hall from our fitness room, you will find our main gymnasium. You will come to the main gym every morning before school if you are not eating breakfast. This is also where the majority of our PE classes are held when we are inside. The boys and girls locker room for PE and sports are held within the main gymnasium. For PE, you will get a locker, be expected to bring clothes to change into, and change out for your PE class each day. Just outside the gym, you will find Mrs. Blevins' Step 3 classroom, and on down the hall, Mrs. Weary's classroom. The next classroom we find is Mr. Burchard's classroom. This classroom is used for band, orchestra, and wind ensemble. Across the hall from the band room, we find Mrs. Hartzell's classroom. She teaches choir, music, and music media and technology. And finishing off the 1300 hallway, you will find a women's restroom, a water fountain and bottle filler, as well as our men's restroom. That finishes up our 1300 hallway. The next hallway we'll venture down is our elective hallway. Our tour of the elective hallway starts with Mrs. Bushnell-Luckett's room. She teaches technology. The next classroom you will find is Mrs. Pauling's art room. Across the hall from art, you will find Mrs. Byers' technology classroom. Continuing on down the elective hallway, you will find Mrs. Darr's speech classroom. The next classroom we'll find is Miss Smith's classroom. She teaches theater, debate, and college and career readiness. Next door you'll find Mrs. Kaler's classroom. She teaches health for 7th and 8th graders. And across the hall you'll find Mrs. Howell's classroom. She teaches Spanish and exploratory Spanish. And Mrs. Howell's room wraps up our elective hallway. And now we head down towards our 6th grade hallway. Our first stop on this hallway is Mrs. Millhouse's room. And across the hall from her room, you will find the 6th grade hallway restrooms, as well as another bottle filler and water fountain. Just around the corner from the restrooms, you will find Officer Turner's office. Continuing down the hall, you will find Mrs. Trowbridge and Miss Ruck's office and classroom, followed by 6th grade English Language Arts, taught by Mrs. Carr and Mrs. Ray. Here's a quick look around one of the English Language Arts classrooms in the 6th grade hallway. The next classroom that you'll come across is History with Mr. Holloway, and here's a look around one of our history rooms. Next on our tour is Mrs. Ward's science classroom, and then we venture on a little further and we find the 6th grade science lab. Next door to our lab, you will find our 2nd science classroom, taught by Mrs. Grounds. Across from science, you'll find 6th grade math, taught by Mrs. Hamilton and Mrs. Sechrist. And let's take a peek into one of their classrooms. Our last stop on the 6th grade hallway is our 2nd history classroom, taught by Ms. McMillan. Now let's head back towards the Commons. The Commons is the area where you will eat lunch and breakfast every day at JMS. The cafeteria is in the corner, and you will line up and get your food and then have a seat at the tables to eat your meals. Found behind our Commons is our auditorium. We have a very spacious auditorium with a wonderful stage for productions and plays, as well as a balcony for extra seating. From the Commons, you will also find another set of restrooms and water fountains and bottle filler. You can also find the stairs to the 8th grade hallway and the doors to the 7th grade hallway. Let's take a peek down the 7th grade hallway. The 7th grade and 8th grade hallways are set up very similar to the 6th grade hallways. Back in the Commons, you'll find the stairwell to the Media Center. In the Media Center, Mrs. Brannon will be there to help you in any way she can. Thanks for coming on this virtual tour with me of JMS. We cannot wait to see you again.